Today is Thursday, October 11th, 2007. This is Mary McCosker, and I am interviewing Angela Broadhead. Okay. So do you have childhood memories of libraries in your life?
Indeed, I do. The first one I remember is when we lived in Rutherford, California, in the Napa Valley, and we lived up quite close to the school, and this library was very, very small. It was in a veterans hall or something like that, and I only could go to this library once a week on a Friday night, and every Friday night certainly was what I did when we were living in Rutherford. And if you lived in St. Helena, of course you had a library, but that was not the case for me. And so that was my first occasion, and my mother and father were delighted because it was so close to me, to where we lived.
So reading was important to you growing up?
Yes, and to my mother and father, and my brother too.
What kinds of books did you like to read?
Well, we didn't have much of a selection, so I read everything that was there. That was Western, history of the United States. There really wasn't much for children, to tell you the truth, but I just practically read whatever was available.
So you grew up in Rutherford, in Napa County.
Well, yes. Well, not. We moved there when I was in the 7th or 8th grade.
Oh.
Yeah. We lived down south before that, Porterville.
Oh, you're from Porterville
Yes.
too. So did you know Ruth?
No.
Dahlia?
No.
No.
No, but I know her.
Yeah.
And we had a conversation not so many years ago, because she remembered the things that I remembered. We went to in the summertime. We had a car. I think it was 1928. So we could go to these the river. And I can't remember the river exactly. And the river you could swim. And she remembers living close by too. So I remember.
Amazing.
Well, that has nothing to do with. But anyway. And I will go on to the next question, I guess.
So you went to high school in
St. Helena.
St. Helena High School?
Yes.
Okay, and then after that, what did you do?
Then I went to Cal and got a degree there.
And did you work in your life? Did you have jobs?
Oh, yes. Actually, to start with, I didn't work because, I remember I did work. I'd forgotten all about it. Before I got married, I worked in in San Francisco. I lived in Berkeley with a roommate, and I worked for this advertising. I can't even remember the name, but it was just because I could type. In those days, that's what we did, and kept records of daily records, not anything further than that, and that was my before I got married.
So when did you first appear in Lafayette?
We came to Lafayette in 1956. I did write that down, and Dorothy was almost at the end of the school year, and Dorothy was an 8th grader, so she got to know people in that 3 weeks before going to high school. And Frank went to the elementary school there, that's still there.
Mm-hmm. Lafayette School?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The going to Lafayette was going to the country. We had come from San Rafael, where we have a magnificent library, and it was kind of a shock to have this little room. I don't know what else to call it. It might have been a house at one time. I don't really know. And so that was what we had to start with. And it was sad because we had such a little place. But I remember years after Dorothy went, and maybe Frank were already in college, I remember going back there as a substitute in the library. And it was still there now. I don't remember how long probably it was in the 50s, the 60s, the beginning 60s maybe. But it had them there for years and years. Well, certainly when we went there, it was already there. And I didn't work very long, or very often, because I was a substitute. But I do remember that it just had these two rooms, and the children's room was to the left, and it had a sort of a wall, semi-wall, and so that was the children's room, and there couldn't have been more than 100 little books there. And then in the other part of the library, it may have been 15 feet. So I don't remember if it was more than 20 feet. I don't think it was as long as my living room.
It was small.
I wish we could, do you have pictures of it?
We think we know which building it was. It's moved to Dewing Avenue.
I've heard of that, and I think we should have pictures of it.
Well, I will try to find a picture to give to Dorothy so you can see what it looks like, but we think we know which one it is. There's a couple of
It was right on the corner of Moraga Boulevard and
Moraga Road.
Moraga Road.
Where the library now is.
But actually, the corner,
it was,
right up closer to the corner where there's still a dentist there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's exactly where.
What was behind there? Do you remember where the new library is now? Where the library is now?
There was another house.
Okay.
There were houses all the way up to. I think there would be one more house.
Okay.
That was it.
Well, the library we have now was built in 1962, so your
62.
recollections are correct about Dorothy probably being away at college.
Yeah, and she can't remember that I worked in the library at all, because so that means she was
gone.
It was in the beginning 60s, I think.
Okay. And then when did you leave Lafayette? When did you move to Rossmore?
Oh, I didn't move to Rossmore until. Oh my gosh, it was
About?
About. I should remember distinctly, but it was in the early 80s.
So you've been here a long time.
Yes, I have. My husband had died in 1975, and I kept my house for a while, but it just was too much for me, taking care of the new roof or painting or the swimming pool or all those things that you have to take care of when you have a house.
Where was your home?
On where Dorothy lives now.
Oh, where Dorothy lives
yes,
now. Okay.
Yes, she bought my house.
Oh, nice. Okay, yeah. So you remember the old library?
Yes, I did. And I remember the library being built.
Do you? What do you remember about that?
Oh, I remember. What I remember is we hired an architect, and periodically, it seems to me every few months, he would have a meeting, because nobody was ever satisfied with what would get done. And it was so funny, because these people trying to make these decisions for the architect were not even librarians, not even, they had no idea what a library should have. And this poor man went through several of these problem meetings, and finally it was decided. And besides, it cost every time he had to change them.
Right.
So I guess at some point somebody decided that enough was enough.
Do you remember the names of some people who were involved in the library building project?
I do remember the librarian, and her name was Beth Morris. I remembered it, and she, by that time, what time what day?
1962, I think.
62.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. By that time, I really had a 20-hour job in the library.
Wow.
And but I worked in Walnut Creek. In those days, we worked 40 hours a week, and that was, I didn't want to do that, but I just loved 20 hours. And I could go to do all the other things I wanted to do in the meantime. And I do remember working for her. She was a nice little lady, just a nice lady. She didn't innovate it. She went along with the flow. And what the most important thing I remember is when Fern Powell Davis, who had become retired as a school teacher in Concord, and she came in and asked Beth Morris if she could borrow the library room because there was no place else to have a meeting in this little Lafayette. And the day that Fern Powell Davis came, she wanted to start a historical society. And so the very day, Beth Morris said to me, "Angela, I'm just too busy. Would you go and be me, in the place of the librarian?" So that was delightful, because I thought having a historical society was a marvelous idea. And she was the person to do it. She was innovative. She just loved change. She loved to do things in the right way, and had wonderful ideas. So that's how it got started.
So if you hadn't done that, Dorothy might not be where she is today, right?
Well, I'm sure she would have called on somebody else,
Well, I don't know.
And so I thought that was nice that we finally got started. And then by that time, we had become a city, if I remember correctly.
1968, I think.
And then we got quite a bit of help from the city in the way of letting us use the library anytime we wanted, that sort of thing. So it went along, and it was really a good time. It was, it was fun. And then they put out the first book that was, well, it was a beginning.
The Blue Book.
Yeah.
The Blue Book.
Blue Book. Yes. And I have a postcard that I just found the other day. I think maybe this would be a marvelous idea again when we go to the new library, because people buy postcards.
Mm-hmm.
And of course you'd have to have somebody who would do it and take pictures or get pictures. Or
There are
whatever.
still some of those in the file cabinets at where all of our files are.
If you don't
But we could
have
sell
this
them.
one,
We could sell them in the historical room there.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it would be marvelous.
You could do amazing things these days with
Yeah.
the computers and stuff.
Yes. Oh, yes. Because when I was working, the computer didn't start until I was working in Walnut Creek.
Right.
And I could handle it then easily, because it was so, antiquated, as we call it now.
What else do you
well-
remember? Dorothy said there was a story about Helen Seaborg and her children.
Oh, I do remember. But that was in the little room.
That was in the original
the
library, the
original-
smaller one.
We have had other libraries now, but the one we're talking about is that little house on the corner. She would come in, and I remember distinctly one day, she had 3 little children. I think, I'm guessing, but I think there was like a 2-year-old, 4-year-old, and then an infant. And all of them, including the baby, insisted on carrying out a book. So I remember one day finding a book for this little fellow in her arms, and I think there was a dog on it. And so we talked about the dog, as I recall. And the other boys just could choose their own,
That was good. Future Nobel Prize winning husband.
Oh, well, the reason I knew the name, I didn't know her, but I asked who she was. And at that time, my husband was working at the laboratory. And that name was so well known all over the United States, and probably more than the United States.
Right.
So I was really interested in the lovely little lady.
Do you remember any details about when you worked in the library about the book delivery program?
Oh, yes. I don't know if it's still in working order these days, because we can't have it in Rossmore because we're a gated community. Yes, I do. Every few days, I'm not sure if it was every day, but I don't think so. A man came from the county library in Pleasant Hill, and he brought all the books that people requested that we didn't have in Lafayette. And I think you could keep them for 2 weeks, and then he would also come and take them back to wherever they came from. And it worked out very well because the library, our library, was not too well. There were not enough variety for the people who lived in Lafayette.
Uh-huh.
So it worked out very well. And he was a very nice man. I remember them too.
And he came every day?
I think he came almost every day. I can't remember exactly. He came from only this region. Now there are others. He must have that came, but he only came to Lafayette, Walnut Creek, Miranda, and probably later on at Moraga. And then there are others went other places, of course.
Were you at all aware of the Friends of the Library when you worked there, or was it the Library Association, or?
Yes, I was aware of it. And it was very active, but I wasn't.
You weren't part of it.
I wasn't part of that.
Okay, let's see. You really have not been involved in the building at all of the planning of the new library, right?
No.
Okay. So what do you hope most for this new library that Lafayette is building? What would you hope for it if you could wish for something?
I would wish that. It sounds so marvelous. It sounds that we can get anything we want from, the laboratory in Berkeley. We can get information from all over, and it's so fascinating to me that something like this can happen in Lafayette. And of course, it took a long time working up and going to Sacramento, no doubt, and many other places before we came to the point where we could have this. And I noticed that several months we are already digging into the place where we're going to have the new library.
So you've been part of the Historical Society.
I stayed because we had a wonderful time in Lafayette. It was a very nice time.
So
all the family. The kids could walk to school. You just walked down the railroad track.
Right.
And very shortly after we moved to Lafayette, the railroad stopped, and then all the ties, I guess they're called, were taken out, and then eventually it became that wonderful walkway that goes clear into Moraga and beyond.
Right. That's nice.
Oh, it's wonderful. I think we were very lucky to have that happen at the right time, and that people got involved in making it happen.
Yeah, how do you feel about the Historical Society finally having a home in the new library?
Well, I don't know too much. I haven't cared. I think it's a marvelous idea, though. Yes, yes.
Well, we're going to have an office and a storage room, and so everything can be...
Yes, and old Betsy can be there,
right,
too.
she will be.
And I'm really interested, this may not be important to this talk, but it interests me is that Joan Merriman and others, all her helpers, have over the many, many years acquired a huge amount of money that they are going to give to the library. And if I hear correctly, they're going to charge the Historical Society for using that room.
Well, we're not sure how much, but there's talk that there will be some rent, but it may be sort of adjusted so that, I don't think it's going to be an exorbitant amount.
Well, I think they should rethink that, because, or I think Joan Merriman and her cohort should keep out enough.
I'm not sure the Friends are going to be charged for their book room, because they do bring in revenue. But the Historical Society may have to pay something. But Ollie Hamlin has endowed the group with a little money for operational things.
He's very interested in Lafayette for, I think it's like 5 generations his family has been here. And I remember distinctly when we first moved here, there was, every year there was a horseshoe. And I think we ought to have a program, the Historical Society, a program about the horseshoe.
That would be really interesting.
Yeah, I think so too.
There are some women who were involved in it who are still around. In fact, I think one works in the book room.
Is that so?
Right. So my friend Mary found out.
Yeah.
But why did you and Paul pick Lafayette to move to?
Well, Paul we were living in San Rafael. And all of a sudden, Paul got this fabulous job working at the laboratory. He worked with physicists and engineers. He was an engineer. And at that time, we didn't have the bridge built.
Oh, the San Rafael Bridge.
San Rafael Bridge. It was in the process. And so
it made it kind of hard to get to work.
It was. You just have to come up with a boat. So we decided that was a good time to look around, and we did that for a while. We looked for quite a while. Our children, of course, didn't want to move. No, children never do. But they are so, in just no time at all, they made friends with people in Lafayette, other children in Lafayette. And it was not too bad we didn't know that ahead of time.
So how did you end up with Lafayette? Because you looked around the
We
area.
looked around, and we didn't want to live downtown. There was hardly a downtown, to tell you the truth. And so this little house, and what was not very far away from downtown, so the children could walk to school, and it was one that we could afford, and that was everybody, all young people who are married have some of us have problems of making a big down payment. Our families always saved before they invested in anything. So that was how I remember it.
Are there any other things that you'd like to say, or anything that I've left out asking you about, or?
Well, I'm really interested in seeing how this, it seems like an adventure having this kind of a library. I don't know of any others. There must be others.
I don't think there's anything quite like what we're doing.
I think I just know it is unique, and I think the whole community is anxious to see what will happen to it. And I haven't heard anyone not be excited about it. Even where people in Walnut Creek are envious because they're about to build a new one and have considerable difficulty. There's really no good place for the library in Walnut Creek.
Unless they go up on the current location. Tell me about the Rossmore Library here. Do you use it?
Oh, all the time.
Do they have a good collection of books?
We have a pretty good collection, but we have this marvelous group of people, men and women, who, after you decide what book you want from any of the books in the library system, or California, or whatever. These people will, you yourself call the one of the libraries, anyone, and they see it, if they have it on the shelf, they will see that it gets delivered to Walnut Creek Library, and then these volunteers go and pick it up, and other volunteers take them back after you're finished reading. So we have, I think, a wonderful system because of those who are willing to take the time to do all this.
So you go down to the Rossmore Library to pick up the books you ordered?
No, actually, we pick it up at the desk, not in the library. So.
Oh, at the desk.
At the desk, the administration.
Oh, wow.
Yes, that's something they do. That happens. I don't know how that happened, but but that's how it works. But I can use the library that we have. Any of us can use that and take out books for 2 weeks, just like a county library.
What a nice service.
But we can't have, as I think I've already mentioned, we can't have the library system. It's because we are a gated community, and so
not everybody could use it.
No, it's unfair.
So there is a small library down at the clubhouse,
Oh yes,
though, right?
yes. You go into the
right, the big room.
The big room,
building,
yeah.
And then it's to your left.
To your left.
So you can check books out there too, right?
You could check out books and film, everything you could have.
Wow.
And it's run by donations. Everybody who uses it is expected, and I'm willing because it's such a good system to be able to.
But that's not part of the county
No,
system.
it is not.
It's like a private Rossmore.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So do people donate books?
Yes.
So do they.
And we have another place where we can donate books. In the Dollar Clubhouse, which was the home of one of the homes of the Dollar. And we have it's called a reading room, and I'm one of the volunteers.
Oh.
And so people will send. When you turn it off, I'm going to get.
Now, and I can order one. And
Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3, 4. Testing.